Tears and reflection at Minnesota State's Capitol in St. Paul last night during a candlelight visual to honor State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. The couple were shot to death in their home over the weekend in what authorities are calling a political assassination. The man accused of shooting, Vance Belter, faces federal and state charges. Meanwhile, police are now investigating after someone broke into Melissa Hortman's home. We're told that family members removed items of value from the house on Tuesday, but yesterday morning, responding officers reported finding that someone had pried plywood off a broken window in the rear of the home and entered. Investigators say there is evidence of an intruder searching the home, but nothing appears of significance to be taken. 11Alive's Dan Kennedy is in Minnesota covering the story. And Dan, welcome to the show. We understand that you were at that visual last night. Give us a sense of the scene there.
I tell you, it's powerful out here today. Last night, we were told about 1,000 people were likely here. It was quiet. It was different from any other vigil that, we're used to covering because there were no speakers, there were no signs. It was very nonpartisan, and it was intended to be that way. People stood out here in silence. They shared stories, they shared grief, and yes, there were tears shed. Governor Tim Walz was out here last night. He was very close with Melissa Hortman, who was killed alongside her husband Mark and their golden retriever. There, some people placed out here photos of that golden retriever in addition to the couple out here, and it really brings close to home just how personal this is for folks here in Minnesota. It was felt last night at the vigil, and it's felt, Chesley, again this morning out here on the steps of the Capitol in St. Paul, where it's just still very much a somber feeling.
Yeah, we can imagine that, certainly. Give us a sense of the overall mood in the area in the wake of this tragedy.
Well, there was fear at first, but that subsided in the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul area once that manhunt was over late Sunday night, once they captured the gunman. But then there was also anger within the last 24 hours. You just heard about the break-in at the Hortman's home days after they were tragically murdered there. And a lot of neighbors shaking their heads saying, why would somebody do this? So you have the anger, the fear is now gone. It's mostly moving on to grief and remembrance. But also there are some calls for change, Chesley. People asking, what can we do to protect our representatives? And what can we do to tamp down some of the political rhetoric? So
with that said, do you get a sense that people are coming together based on this, or is there some kind of deeper divide there?
Well, it's hard to say, from where we stand here in Minnesota. I mentioned it's very personal here, but then you go on the internet, Chesley, and you see some of these conspiracy theories, you see misinformation. It was out there within hours of the shooting. So yes, it is bringing people together. We saw it at the vigil last night with 1,000 people standing close together. By the way, I mentioned it was silent at that vigil, but at the end, they all sang Amazing Grace together in a very powerful moment. So it is bringing folks together in Minnesota, but also creating some of those deep divides that we see reignite time and time after again after tragedy across the country, usually on social media.
Yeah, certainly lawmakers are shooken up by this. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to any of them. How are they sharing their feelings this morning?
I personally have not, but one of my colleagues at the station up here did talk with former Republican Governor Tim Pawlenty of Minnesota yesterday, and he discussed this tragedy and said he is saddened by the state of public discourse and politics in our country. He said, quote, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent, you have to do better. He said we all have to do better and be better. We also, Chesley, heard from one of the lawmakers who was an intended target in this shooting. He went to her home, the gunman went to her home, but she was not there by the grace of God. She said in a statement yesterday, we will not let fear or division win. Chesley, we're hearing similar condemnation here in Minnesota that we're hearing across the country, and even in Georgia. Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia issued a statement in the hours after this shooting saying that there is no place in America for political violence of any kind. So you saw quick calls, for the most part, from politicians across the country of all stripes, red, white, and blue, dismissing the shooting and saying it's time to come together.
Yeah. Real quickly, Danny, any beefing up of security at all?
Well, not exactly that I have seen. Looking around the Capitol, you see the occasional state trooper or two driving around. Of course, being from Atlanta, I'm not sure how that compares to a normal day. I know that they are discussing the importance of beef up security for lawmakers here. And in the wake of that break-in at the home of the Hortmans, they have once again increased security outside the home, which, Chesley, is something they should not have had to do. It is time for this family to be able to move on, grieve, and process.
Yeah, absolutely right there. Dan Kennedy, live for us this morning. Thanks so much for being with us and sharing their insight.